It's Submitting Live with Ty Gay and Chase Hill.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are, Submitting Live podcast, our first interview with a real human being other than ourselves. Yeah, Henry Akins in the house. Yay!
Yeah.
So
I'm officially the first guest, huh?
Yeah, you are the first
Wow,
one.
it's official.
Yeah,
Awesome.
We kept
I'm honored.
Yeah, we were scared to bring anybody in here that didn't know us, so you were perfect, and you can defend yourself, so I think you're going to be all right.
Hopefully.
So, Henry Akins is a black belt under Rickson Gracie, for those of you that don't know, who've been under a rock or something. How long have you been training Jiu-Jitsu, Henry?
22 years? I think.
Yeah.
22, 23 years.
And I've known you since what? You were a blue belt, right? So we've known each other almost the whole time.
I think 97 is when we met.
Yep, 97. Ooh.
When I was when I was on tour.
Yes, you were on tour. That's an interesting topic. What band were you on tour with, Henry?
At that time, I was touring with Tool.
That's right.
On the Enema tour.
Ooh, man, I used to love Tool. I still love them, so don't get offended, Maynard. But I would follow them around to these shows all the time, and one time I ended up seeing Henry backstage, and I could tell he was security because he looked like security. He was super young. Henry's a big dude now, but he was like scary looking back then. A little younger, a little meaner maybe.
It was probably a little meaner. Definitely a little meaner back then.
I'll never forget, I walked up to you and I was like, man, because I'd done martial arts, and I walked up to you and I was like, man, I know you've done some kind of martial art before. What was it? I'll never forget. You stood up off the chair and you crossed your arms and raised your chin and said, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Oh my God. So it totally blew my mind at that point, because I'd seen I think maybe UFC 1 or 2 at that point. And holy crap, yeah. So that was when we met. And then I think you ended up staying there when we first met in Oklahoma. You ended up staying there because your parents, now it's Thanksgiving, so you were in town or something. Came over to my house and showed me some basic moves, kicked my ass a little bit, and the rest is history. Oh, yeah.
Just making converts. So that was the job, right? We were just converting people back in the day, making them believers. So got to whip up on them a little bit to make them a believer.
Shit, yes, you did whip up on me a lot. Henry's known for his pressure. His nickname is Smash City, so I was the recipient of that many times. And when he would come down for, Christmas, Thanksgiving, things like that, I would always get in a little smash session. Yeah, it's very good, very good. So out of your touring experience, I know a lot of people ask you jiu-jitsu questions, but out of your touring experience, especially with the wonderful super band Tool, do you have any crazy stories or experiences that you can share without getting in too much trouble?
Crazy stories or experiences. I mean, the whole event, the whole touring thing was kind of crazy, because imagine I think I was 21 at the time, traveling with a rock band, so that was just an insane experience for me. And it lasted a few months. I think I was on tour for 3 months with them. So just getting to see shows every night, it was amazing experience, because I also get to see what goes on in the background, that goes on before the show, all the hard work that gets put on, from the morning time all the way up until the show. And obviously the show is kind of the grand finale, but yeah, it was an awesome experience. But I stopped touring because at the end of the day, once you kind of become accustomed to something, or it becomes a job, and that's right. What it was. I was basically on the road to be able to train with Maynard, because at the time, me and Maynard were the same belt level. We were both blue belts together, and we were both training together. And he wanted to keep training jiu-jitsu while he was on the road. And so it was awesome to be able to travel and be able to train and be able to see kind of the backstage and see what goes on at these shows. But at the end of the day, my main priority was always jiu-jitsu. My main focus was always jiu-jitsu. And so, that's why I stopped touring, is because I realized, it's very difficult to have a concrete training schedule when you're on the road. And that was always my priority in life. There's, I moved from Oklahoma to Los Angeles, basically left all my friends, left all my family behind, moved 1,500 miles away to be able to train and learn jiu-jitsu. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that if you hadn't went on that little 3-month stretch right there, I would have never met you. And none of my students would have jiu-jitsu. I mean, I wouldn't have met you. School in Edmond, Oklahoma, to have a jiu-jitsu school. So we all thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Big thanks for all that. Holy crap. It's we always think about, the butterfly effect. Every action has a reaction to it, but sometimes we don't think about the little things as much. And I think because of that episode in my life and how life-changing it was, I look at everything with a little bit more intensity. And what I mean by that is, like, I look at each time I have an interaction with somebody, or I'm talking to them about jujitsu, for example, or whatever, I know that it could have another effect than what the original effect is, a secondary effect. And that's totally what you had on me, is this secondary effect. And coming up doing jujitsu, and I would train with different people, and nobody ever felt really like Henry. And Henry was very fight oriented, right? It was about fighting, and about fighting somebody bigger and stronger than you and being able to survive against them, and then take advantage of their weaknesses. And so I did a lot of sport, jiu-jitsu and stuff, and I didn't see a lot of the secret stuff that Henry was doing in that stuff. And so he was always very fascinating to me, and I would try to pick your brain every time you'd come in town, and I would learn the newest, greatest, whatever. And I remember Henry would come in and just kind of fall through my new magical guard that I had, or whatever it was. And it was a good, I think it was a good, like, point of reference for me for my jiu-jitsu career, because I could always go to you and not everybody has that. So I was very lucky to be able to go to you and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this? And you were very honest with me through my whole career, and always kind of kept me under your wing and would give me these little secrets and tricks. And I really, really appreciate that. And because what you had said before is, like, Rickson, he'd left and kind of done his own thing and wasn't really sharing jiu-jitsu out there. And I think by sharing the things with me, it helped me share some of those things with some of my students, and kind of kept that spirit alive. And now you're really keeping it alive, because you have your own network, basically what you're calling it, a network, your own mind-blown, not association, but...
Well, Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, which is my website, which
Right.
is something that I started a couple years ago. I was traveling around teaching seminars, and I had so many people that were really kind of blown away by what I was teaching, what I was showing. I wanted to make it easier for people to have access to that information. And you're right, at the time, Rickson wasn't really teaching as much. He had kind of, I think he might have even been living in Brazil at the time. And so he wasn't really teaching so much, and we're really fortunate now that he's kind of popped back into the kind of the limelight and the spotlight in the jiu-jitsu world, and he's much more open to passing on and sharing his knowledge. Mm-hmm. But that was the reason at the time. I really wanted people to be able to have access to this information that really so few people had access to. There were not a lot of people that really had access to Rickson's teachings, and there's a reason he is the best in the world, and it's not because he's the most athletic. There was subtleties in his jiu-jitsu that have a huge effect on your effectiveness and your efficiency. And so that was a huge thing for me, is really seeing that everyone in the jiu-jitsu community, we're all brothers and sisters. I'm a big believer that we're all kind of one giant family. Even though there's rivalries between schools and things like that, we all share a similar passion for the art. And so it was really about me sharing that with others and helping people, giving back, trying to give back to jiu-jitsu what it's given me. So I'm really, really blessed that, I was able to train with Rickson, and now that I'm able to, basically make a living sharing the jiu-jitsu, sharing the art that I've put basically committed half my life to learning. Now I have the opportunity to share it with others.
Yeah, dude, I think that's really great. And again, the secondary effects of it are amazing too. Like, if you didn't have a life doing this, I wouldn't have a life doing this. It's just crazy how it's all connected. And we are all like brothers and sisters in jiu-jitsu for real. I think Hedon said something really cool one time. He said, when I roll with somebody, it's like going out to eat with them 4 times. Because you are kind of connected with them on a different level. It's not like any other kind of martial art where you're striking or anything else, because you're in these weird moments together, down there.
Well, there's definitely a certain level of intimacy that's involved when you have such close personal contact. But it's one of the things I realized with jiu-jitsu and through the years is, with jiu-jitsu, when you're training with someone, and the foundation of any relationship is trust. Mm-hmm. Right? They say the foundation of any relationship is trust, that you trust the person. And without trust, it's hard to have a deep relationship. And what happens when we're training is, because we do have the potential to injure each other. very easily, right? And so I'm going to trust you that when I tap, you're going to let go, and you're going to trust me that when you don't. And so you have to kind of develop this trust among your training partners. And it's really interesting. I always tell people, all of my best friends, all of the people that I am the closest with, that I'm have the deepest relationships with, all came from jiu-jitsu. And it's, I guess, that intimacy of not only sharing the same struggle, understanding what you're going through, and how learning jiu-jitsu is a very difficult process. But it's also creates a ton of growth in all the individuals, right? But so each of us understanding like what we're going through, being there to help each other out, and the trust that's developed from the training, is so important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that for sure. Yes.
And I was just going to say, on your website, I really enjoy your Hidden Jiu-Jitsu website about how you also don't just put just moves and only content of just specific technique. You will put seminars and other things that you do. Kind of, how do you decide what content goes on the website? Is it more from your users that use it and you just get feedback, or do you kind of have an idea of what you already want to put out there? Yeah,
I have a pretty good idea for what I'm putting out. So I have a bunch of different modules on that cover specific positions. But as I was traveling around teaching seminars, I was getting such amazing feedback from the attendees, like, wow, man, that seminar was amazing. And so many times I've heard guys say that was one of the best seminars that they've ever attended. And so I felt it was really important to capture all of that information. And so I started, as I was traveling, I was recording all of my seminars too. And the main goal for me is just to be able to really share all of the information that I have, be able to share it with the world, make sure people have easy access to it. So, I have a club called the Mind Blown Club that's within my website, the Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, which I basically release a new seminar every month to the members, and they're able to kind of see the seminars, because also, as I was teaching seminars, I had people actually following me around from city to city, traveling to be able to learn. And so it was just for me, and people kept asking, like, how do I get more information? How do I get more information? So I wanted to make it easy for people to be able to have that access to the information.
Well, I know I've been to several of your seminars, and I always enjoy them. So please, if you're ever near where Henry's teaching, go see him.
Yeah. Won't be disappointed. You might get smushed a little.
Yes.
But it's a good kind of smashing, Yeah, for sure, man. What about online questions? Do we have any cool ones that came up?
Yeah, we have several questions. I know you had some questions. Do you want to do your questions first, your stuff first, or before we stick to just some of the online?
Let's see, like EBI. What do you think about EBI and the no point?
That was a question too.
Type rule set that's going.
Awesome. I love it. And very thankful for Eddie Bravo for bringing that type. But actually, Rose Gracie was one of the first ones to really make that type of competition format that really started doing it. She started doing it with the Gracie Worlds.
Right.
And Eddie Bravo was a huge supporter in that. And then EBI came along. I always tell people, when we first start training jiu-jitsu, we're not thinking about points. We're not thinking about, there's not a referee standing over us counting points, seeing if we got points for passing the guard and for holding for 3 seconds. And so it's very, very unnatural, that style of training, because when we're training in the gym, we're not thinking about points. We're just thinking about surviving, staying safe, and then see if we can get to a good position and finish, right?
Yeah.
And so you actually have to change the way that you train. Change the way that you naturally train in order to compete for points. If you're competing for these point tournaments, like IBJJF rules, you actually have to completely change the way that you're training.
Right.
It's not the natural way that most of us start training, where we're basically, they do a 4 or 5 or 6 minute round in the gym and you just slap hands and you just start rolling, right? When you're just rolling, you're not really thinking about points. You're just thinking about, okay, am I going to finish him or is he going to finish me? And so because that's the way that we naturally train, it only makes sense that that's the way we should compete.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's great. I think I'm really, really happy that type of format is becoming more regular, and it's becoming more. I think even Fight to Win is like that, right? Is Fight to Win like that, or do they have?
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
No, Fight to Win, it's judges.
They have judges at the
They
end.
have judges.
It's off of the advantage.
Yeah.
So if somebody's attacking a lot from the guard, they
Right.
have more of an advantage. If
So
they're
they
trying
do
to pass
judges
from
at
top.
the end.
Yeah, there's
right?
3
But it's not-
judges,
they don't do a
so-
point system.
No,
it's just
there's no points.
More,
Correct.
whoever's more dominant in
Yeah.
the match. Instead of with the EBI rules at the end of the
Yeah.
15 minutes, they do a positional.
Spiderweb.
They do a
Correct.
positional type training
That's right.
to see who.
Yeah, and Seth
so
Daniels is the
there's-
guy running that Fight to Win.
Right.
He's a good dude doing a great job. I mean, I love that jiu-jitsu's getting more lights
Exposure.
and cameras, on it as opposed to just
Right, and they're doing more matches, and those guys are getting paid. So it's cool
Correct.
that there's money coming in for the competitors now. Where before, if you wanted to compete, you had to spend a bunch of money to compete.
Yeah.
So you'd have to buy a plane ticket and travel over here, to compete, and buy rent a hotel, get a hotel
you sponsored
room, and-
yourself.
Yeah, and there's no money in it, and especially for these athletes, people that have dedicated half their life to training. You're spending tons of money if you want to go compete. Now there's finally events where the athletes are getting paid, which is so important for the growth of jiu-jitsu.
Oh, man, I know.
as soon as money starts coming into the sport, it really propels the sport forward. It really pushes the sport forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. And on that same note, so now, Eddie's got the combat jiu-jitsu now, which is, I think, super, super interesting because now everybody's having to revisit the old school closed guard.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge step in the right direction. It's a huge step. It's not quite there yet. That's still kind of a head scratcher for me because how do you do it? How do you create something like that that's still in a safe, effective way? Because in the reality,
It doesn't turn to MMA.
Yeah.
well, in the reality, slapping is great because it introduces striking into the mix, which obviously is something that we all have to be prepared for. I mean, originally when jiu-jitsu was trained, we were training it with strikes. In the early days, there wasn't a separation of training jiu-jitsu with strikes or without strikes. It was
Right.
just we trained jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu was we have to be prepared to deal with strikes. I always tell people, and this has been quoted so many times, that in the beginning, jiu-jitsu was trained to defeat all the other martial arts. So
Right.
we had to deal with karate guys. I had to deal with a boxer. I had to deal with wrestlers. You had to deal with, see if we can use jiu-jitsu, develop jiu-jitsu to defeat other martial artists. Nowadays, the way jiu-jitsu is primarily trained is to beat other jiu-jitsu guys.
Correct.
And so it's just grappler against grappler and just going for submissions, So it's definitely a step in the right direction, but it's not, it's still very, very limited because one, slaps do not have the same effect as punches. So how do we do that in a safe way? And the other thing too is when we're grappling, I always say this, the best tools, the best striking tools for a grappler are elbows, knees, and headbutts.
Yeah.
I understand headbutts might be a little bit difficult to train safely, so that's always something that I've kind of scratched my head about. They don't even allow headbutts in mixed martial arts and MMA. But knees and elbows, those are the tools of the grappler because we're considered close range fighters. And so really you don't really get that full training for self-defense, which I think is really the whole purpose of combat jiu-jitsu is training for self-defense, bringing that self-defense element back into jiu-jitsu if you can't do knees and elbows.
Yeah.
Right. And knees and elbows, the thing with knees and elbows is they come, you can do a huge amount of damage from a very, very close range. And there's different angles for elbows than there are punches. You don't have to create the same amount of space. When you're throwing punches, you have to create a little bit more space to be effective with punches. With elbows, you can do it at a much closer range. They do way more damage if you know how to throw elbows. And the knees too. There's ways of using knees from close range which have a dramatic effect on the course of a fight. And so if you're not training with all those tools, you're still very, very limited. So, for me, I highly recommend that all of the jiu-jitsu schools train with all those elements, because at the end of the day, look, if you get in a fight and your life depends on it, you want to use all of the tools available to you to help you save your life. And if you can punch or you can knee someone or you could elbow someone and that would end the fight, why wouldn't you use it, right? The problem is if you don't train with those tools, they're not going to be available to you when you need them. And so that's a big thing for me is making sure that people are training in that way, and so when you get into a fight, not only do you know how to defend yourself from punches and knees and elbows, but you also can use them. You have those as tools to be able to use in fighting, right? That's so important. If you don't train that way, it's not going to be available to you. It's like, if you've never thrown a roundhouse kick before, how likely are you to do it in a fight? Or if you've never thrown an uppercut before, how likely are you to do that when you're fighting, right? You're not. It's just not a tool that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. We see that every day with new people coming to jiu-jitsu that assume that it's going to be easy and they can just do it right off the bat, and they can't. And then, so it's the same thing for us in striking if we're not putting it into the mix. At our school, we have 1 day a week where we have to put on the gloves, and something that day will rotate. Some days will be with the gi, some days will be without. We even do a ball game where we do like a knife drill. One guy has a ball and the other guy doesn't. You're just trying to keep the ball away from you. But it's just to kind of keep that in our reflexes and make sure that it's coming up.
You got to train it. You got to train it. And so that's the thing for me is huge is, train with strikes. Like people think jiu-jitsu is just submissions. It's not.
Right.
There's so much striking that goes into jiu-jitsu, especially the way that we used to train. There's so much striking involved. Like using strikes opens up a lot of things. It makes your submissions easier. And so, learning how to use strikes with training and learning how to deal with strikes is such an important element of jiu-jitsu. But, unfortunately, it's very, very rarely taught anymore.
Who is one of your favorite grapplers to watch right now? Whenever they compete or they're going to come up, who's a person's game that you just, maybe not that they always win everything, but you just enjoy how they compete or grapple?
Rickson Gracie, like that match with him and Buchecha was probably. So obviously I got to see Rickson do the exact same thing, and so it very much reminded me of like everyone says, Hodger has a very, very basic game, right? He's got a very, very basic, very simple game, but he's able to execute it at the highest levels. And that's the same thing that I witnessed with Rickson. And so, it really, leading up to that match, most people had said that Buchecha was going to win. They did interviews with all these top-level black belts, all the the guys that are world champions and high-level competitors, and most of the guys said Buchecha's going to win because he's younger, he's bigger. I think he outweighed Hodger by 40 pounds. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's more athletic, he's faster. But we all know that's not what jiu-jitsu is about, right? And the amazing thing with Hodger is he had been away from gi competition for 5 years, and he was close to 40. And so now he's taking on the current 2-time world champion. And, it was that never, however many times I see that, that being done where you have an older guy just destroying the current world champion, like I saw Rickson do so many times, it never fails to blow my mind and impress me, because, when you see guys doing it, okay, well, it's possible to achieve that level. He finished Buchecha in 2 minutes on the ground. Like once the fight hit the ground, it was over in 2 minutes, right? So that is just mind-blowing. It's just how impressive is that when you're definitely outweighed. The guy was bigger, stronger, more athletic, and he was able to finish him so quick. And from something that all of us have pretty much know and seen. Who hasn't seen how to pull guard and take the back and go for a bow and arrow choke, right? But he was able to apply it at the highest level. And so, I always tell people the basics, the foundation, focus on the basics. You can never get too good at the basics.
Amen to that.
You can never get too big. And that's a big thing of what I teach is I really focus on the basics of jiu-jitsu. That's what I saw Rickson using against all these world champions, and he was able to crush people with it. Hodger does the same thing. I think it was one of the world champions he competed where I think it was 10 guys in a row he mounted and cross-collar choked.
Yes.
And so in all these fighting arts and fighting sports, you can never get too good at the basics. It's like Mayweather, he will never stop practicing his jab. He's never going to think, okay, I'm already good enough at the jab. I'm not going to use it anymore. I'm not going to practice anymore, right? The fundamentals, the foundation is really what it's all about.
Do you keep up with much of other combat sports like UFC or MMA?
I do. I enjoy
boxing?
Watching it. I enjoy watching the other combat sports. Of course, boxing and mixed martial arts. I enjoy it because you understand the art. You understand the strategy behind it. And so for me, it's so amazing to watch these athletes at a high level and how they're basically dealing with problems, how they're dealing with situations, right? And how what are the techniques, what are they doing to try to survive? What are the techniques they're using, or what are the strategies they're using to be able to overcome or to deal with adversity? So I love watching combat sports. I think it's just.
So I believe it's today that Alec fights Gordon Ryan, isn't that tonight?
It's tonight.
Yeah. So this probably won't
this is
air
being recorded.
This is being recorded, but. yeah. So how do you
When's
feel
this
about
going to
that?
air?
It'll probably air like in a few days, like Wednesday
Okay.
or Thursday. This is a Sunday.
How do I think about the match?
What do you think about that?
I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome that Alec is putting himself on the line. Hopefully, you know, they're able to generate some money and pay back some of the athletes. I think that was the whole purpose for the match.
Yeah.
You know, Gordon put on a really, really impressive display at Abu Dhabi. You know, dominating that division and submitting. He had a very, very high submission percentage against submitting a lot of the best guys out there. So, yeah, I'm super excited. We're actually going to have Gordon at Dynamics. He's teaching a seminar this coming Wednesday from I think 11 to 1.
Nice.
So I'll be attending that seminar, and I'm super excited to be able to learn from
you
him.
guys better show
So
up.
yeah, Los Angeles Dynamics Martial Arts this Wednesday from 11 to 1. You know, for me, man, I'm always trying to learn. And so obviously he's doing some pretty cool stuff. He's doing some amazing stuff. And he's super young. So, I mean, I think for him, for Gordon, I mean, he's just on the verge of greatness. You know, even though he's done some great things, I mean, he hasn't even reached his full potential yet. So
Yeah, I think he's wanted to go to MMA and stuff too. Want to do gi and stuff.
well,
so
he said he wants to do gi,
Yeah.
and then so that's I think the next step for him is to try to see if he can dominate the gi and then transition to MMA. So
yeah.
that'll
That's
be
good for him.
Good, some great goals.
I've heard Ty talk about it a lot, but you know, with because he's been in jiu-jitsu a long time, just like yourself, and leg locks are now becoming more popular. And Ty talked about that when he first started training, he trained leg locks all the time, but then it kind of got pushed to the back, or it was disrespectful to do it. So what do you think about those kind of coming back now and being more popular? Speaking of Gordon Ryan.
Yeah, that's the thing is it's not new, right? It's been done for a long time, but back in the day, it was kind of frowned upon. I think when I was a blue belt, I was actually doing footlocks a lot and training footlocks a lot, and you know, it was frowned upon, and so people stopped doing it. And so what happened is people stopped doing it. Now your attacks, you know, because people are not attacking with it, now you kind of lose the ability or the knowledge to defend it. And so I think it's great that it's kind of being reintroduced and repopularized, because it was a very weak aspect of most jiu-jitsu practitioners' games, the leg attacks. And if you think about it, in jiu-jitsu, most of us understand how to attack the neck and how to attack the arms. Right. So now you have 2 more limbs available to attack. Right. So, I mean, you're 60% more dangerous now when you have 2 more limbs available to attack. Right. I mean, before you had 3 limbs, now you have 5 limbs to attack. So it makes you a far more dangerous. And the other thing with attacking the legs is, I mean, when you're passing, if you understand how to attack the legs, it helps you to pass guard, right? Because people are so used to kind of pushing and using their legs to kind of push you away, create distance, create space. Now, if you start attacking the legs and mix that in with passing, it makes it, you know, it makes you a much better passer, that ability to attack the legs. And so I am really, really glad that people are starting to incorporate that into their training. You know, just makes you a more complete martial artist.
Back in the day, it was just not as prestigious kind of feeling. It was like kind of like, oh, well, you
that's
got
not a problem.
Luck, you know.
Yeah, they thought it was cheap. It was considered cheap.
I have a question for you. Now, me and you, we started in our 20s, and now we're getting older, unfortunately.
Speak for yourself.
What are your ideas, secrets, tricks, hacks to being able to stay on the mat for the rest of our lives? Because I know you are like me and you want to stay there for as long as we possibly can, right? So do you have any tips or tricks, or maybe even for new people that are coming up, some things that we did coming up that you would suggest to do or not to do, or things that you're doing now that help you recover fast, anything like that that helps you stay on the mat?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, the intensity of training, right? The intensity that you train, like before, I mean, when I first started, I was training 5 hours a day. 6-7 days a week. You know, I was training all the time. And I would show up in the morning at the academy, get there at 7 o'clock. I would train the 7 o'clock class, the 8 o'clock class, take a break, train 2 hours at noon, you know, from noon to like 1:30, 2 o'clock, and then train the 6 o'clock class, 7 o'clock class, you know. So I was training nonstop. Now I just can't, my body can't handle that much training. And even if I do that much training, even if I'm training for 4 or 5 hours a day, one day, I need to take a rest day. You know, I need to rest. So the recovery is very important, but also the intensity of the training. That's the thing that people don't understand is you do not need to train super intense to develop yourself and to get better. And actually, it can be detrimental. So every time people train, they think they need to train at 100%, but actually is a little bit detrimental to training, because the biggest detriment to training is inconsistency. Okay. And what happens is with injury, anytime you're injured and you can't train, right, you become inconsistent. And so the biggest kind of factor to really growth and developing yourself in jiu-jitsu is being consistent on the mat, is being there every day or 3 days a week or whatever, right? If you're training 3 days a week and then all of a sudden you have to take a month off, you regress a lot. And not only do you regress, but it's more the timing and your sensitivity is off. And then it takes, the first few weeks to kind of get that back. And so for me, when I train now, I don't need to train so intense, and my training is a lot more focused on, okay, what am I looking to develop today? What am I looking to develop these next couple weeks? What do I want to focus on in my training, and what aspect of my game do I want to develop? And so positional training is an amazing tool for that. Using positional training, putting myself in the position that I'm specifically looking to develop. And then the intensity of training. Most people, they just want to roll. And when they want to roll at 100%. That's not, I think that's not always, it's great for a workout, doing those open rolls. It's great for a workout. And obviously when you're training at that intensity, you're going to get an amazing workout, but it's not always the best for learning. Right. And that's what we're really looking for, is to learn and to grow. And so by taking the intensity down, you also reduce the risk of injury. Sure.
And wouldn't you also probably say that, like, if you're just one of those kind of people that just has to have an intense roll every time, you're probably going to run out of as many training partners. For example, like, girls are not going to want to roll with the guy who's like the intense rip your head off guy all the time.
Oh, for sure.
Kids, for example, it's like you can't just be going completely all out all the time. We can kind of understand that, but like if you have somebody that's your own size, you kind of look at them differently sometimes.
Well, that's the other thing for training too, is people don't realize when you're training, it's not a competition between you and your training partner. You guys are there to help each other get better.
Yeah, not rolling against each other.
It's not like I'm here to fight you. We're here to help each other get better. And so that's the thing. If I'm training with someone and I know I can crush them, my job is not to crush them. It's to push them to the limits where I know they will grow. It's to give them enough of a struggle, enough difficulty, enough problems where I'm forcing them to grow without completely crushing and dominating them, where they feel like, man, it ruins their day, or they feel like they want to quit, or they want to stop training, or you know what I'm saying? And so that's really something that for each of us to really have to learn and develop, knowing how hard to push our training partners. Knowing how to train with someone so that we can help them to grow, really, because that's all of our jobs. We're all like, when you go into a gym, when you're training, everyone's there to help each other, right? We can't just get better by ourselves. And so my job is to be a good training partner for the other people. And I'm hoping that they will be a good training partner for me too, I mean, I'm not going to learn anything if someone rolls with me and I get tapped out every 30 seconds. It's like, what are you really learning?
It kind of goes back to your first point of trust too, again, huh?
Yeah, and a lot of times having that experience, it just crushes people. They're not able to deal with that. They walk away feeling like, I suck.
Defeated.
They feel defeated. And so we never want to do that to our training partners, or even if you're tapping them out, even if you're maybe say I'm working on my attack and I'm trying to see if I can finish as fast as I can. If I'm doing that, then I'm also, after the finish, I say, hey, this is what you could have done differently, or this is what you should do. And so that way, it's not just someone getting crushed.
Because they're your training partner.
Learning,
if you discourage them enough, they're going to be gone, and you're not going to have a training partner.
Exactly.
I wish more people would clue into that.
Exactly. That's the thing, is I think so much times a lot of people that train have not just developed that understanding. Is they go in there and it's all about ego, and it's like, how many times if I can tap everybody out that I train with, I'm having a good day, and if I get tapped out a bunch in this training, I'm having a bad day. But it's not about tapping. It's about, how much did I learn today? Where did I grow? Did I learn something? Am I better today than I was yesterday? And so really it's about growth. It's about, people judge too much by how many times they tapped or how many times they tapped others. their
Stop the podcast and
role
rewind
that
it
day.
right now if you're watching and just watch that part again right there. Maybe 5 or 6 times, and please get it through your heads because it's so true. Once you give up the idea of just that submission is the win and the getting submitted is the loss, jiu-jitsu becomes awesome, like super fun. And
I mean, there's days that I train where I will not try to finish anyone. I just want to move with them and roll with them and transition with them and develop my movement. So there's days where I intentionally do not go for submissions. Or there's days where I intentionally constantly put myself in bad positions. So I let people mount me. I let people get cross-eyed. And once I get out, I will let them recover. And so that's the thing is it's not about submitting people. It's about developing yourself. And a lot of times when you're just out there to dominate people, you don't learn, you don't grow, and neither do they. And so it benefits no one, So yeah, it's that's I think a big thing for most jiu-jitsu practitioners to try to get out of their head. Getting tapped out does not define you. Tapping does not define you, and tapping someone else out does not define you either, right? It's all a personal. This is all a tool for personal development and personal growth, and so you should never try to judge yourself in relation to anyone else. It's, am I a better person? Am I a better martial artist than I was yesterday? That's it. Am I better today than I was yesterday? And that's really how we need to start defining ourselves instead of, oh, I tapped today and I suck, or I tapped out all these guys. I feel good about myself.
Well, dude, I'm super thankful that you're out there carrying the torch like that, and I think that more people need to be. I'm just thankful to have you out there in our community doing that kind of stuff, and thankful to have you as my friend also. Helping me all through the years, and like I said before, my school wouldn't even exist. So, if you're somebody out there that's mentioning jiu-jitsu to someone else, remember that little effect, man. That could be a big effect. As if you're a teacher of jiu-jitsu, when you're talking to somebody about it. Man, those people are listening to you, so it's important to choose your words wisely. I think that's something you've done very, very well over the years.
Yeah.
So
words can have a profound impact on someone's life, and that's the thing for me. I was always trying to share and spread jiu-jitsu because it was such a powerful tool for me for personal development, for growth, for confidence in myself. It changed my life, and so to be able to share that with my friends is a blessing, man.
I appreciate you, brother. All right.
You want
Life podcast.
Do you want to do three or four questions or no?
3 or 4 questions?
Yeah, just 3 or 4 questions that we have from listeners.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, we got like 4 minutes.
Man,
4 minutes.
Last podcast.
Ready?
I went over.
Go. Let's see.
I know there's one.
Which one?
Why did you cut your hair?
Yes.
Why did it cut
That's
my
You've
that.
been asking me that.
Yeah, then we had like
Long
4
hair
questions about that.
Sucks for training.
Oh,
Actually,
man,
when I
he's
first
right.
when I first moved out to LA, I had long hair, and I remember I did a challenge match in the school, and my hair got in my face. I threw a punch, and my hair was all in my face, and I couldn't see, and I ended up still clinching with the guy, taking the guy down. But that day, after that, and I was a white belt at the time, I shaved my head. So I actually had long hair when I first moved out to LA, and I shaved my head after that. And I had short hair for 20 years until I was in Costa Rica a couple of years ago doing a camp, and a guy at the camp said, "Man, you have such a great head of hair. You should grow it out." And I thought, that's a great idea. 20 years, I forgot why I actually shaved my head, and I was like, oh. And so, anyways, I grew my hair out. It took me a couple of years. It was frustrating going through all those different phases of hair growing out, and I grew my hair out long. And then once I had it long, I remembered how bad it sucked. Yeah. People are stepping on your hair all the time. It's getting pulled out. Your hair is shedding, and so it's slowly been getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I think I had long hair for, I don't even know if I had it long for a year, but yeah, it's slowly getting shorter and shorter now. So every couple months, it just gets a little bit shorter, a little bit shorter.
I constantly tease Chase. I'm telling him I'm going to shave my head every week.
Henry, we need to hold him down one day.
Yeah, just
maybe both of us together.
I know my hair. I'm almost back to fully shaved head now.
Yeah.
I still kind of. I didn't want to be traumatized by just going from long hair to shaved head again. So I've managed to keep hold of a little bit of it, and we'll see.
All right, we're gonna do one more.
Sure.
One more question. I asked you this earlier, but I kind of have a little part 2 question. Did you ever get to train with Alio and answer that question?
Unfortunately, I didn't, but I did get to spend some time with him, in person while he was alive, which was awesome. And
cool.
It was pretty crazy just to feel, being a very, very old guy, how still strong he was. It was pretty crazy. You know, he was very, very healthy, very strong. Like you could feel it. It's like shaking his hand and hanging out. I mean, so yeah, that was actually a very, very cool experience getting to meet him.
Did Rickson, because I've seen other videos of Horion and Hoyler, they talk very highly about their dad, about Elio.
Of them.
Did
All of
Rickson
them
do that?
it.
Like when he taught classes, did he ever reference back to his dad? And I mean, he seems like he always hold his dad high.
I think all of the Gracies really have an incredible amount of reverence for their father. You know,
sure.
His contribution to the art was so much of it was the philosophical side of trying to figure out how to do things in a very smooth and effortless way. So you guys have been training for a while, and I'm sure you guys maybe know the difference, but you know there was a big rivalry between the Rickson Gracie side and the Elio Gracie side, which one of the huge differences was their philosophical idea of what jiu-jitsu was. Carlson was very much into strength and power, and you can see that in all of his students. They were all very muscular, very strong, very like powerful dudes, and he was always like, let's take jiu-jitsu and incorporate strength into it and power into it, and then it's going to be more effective. Where Elio's side was always about how can we do things in a more efficient way, and how can we do things using less strength and less power. And that was kind of, a big contribution to him was like, look, I'm a small guy. I'm an old, small, weaker person. I can't do that, and so how do I defend myself against a bigger, stronger person? And was the same philosophy which was taken from their father. And Horion obviously talked about it a lot in Gracie in Action. Yeah. And that, I think, is really what helped jiu-jitsu to spread, is that mindset and that philosophy is,
I agree.
That's what really made jiu-jitsu accessible, and that made everyone really want to learn it, is to know that, hey, as a smaller, weaker individual, can I defend myself against someone bigger and stronger?
Right.
So really, Elio Gracie was, being a smaller guy and having to learn jiu-jitsu, and his brothers were bigger than him,
Right.
Being able to pass on that philosophy and that mindset and that idea and developing yourself in that way. It's a mindset for training. Does this work against someone bigger and stronger? Will this work against someone bigger and stronger? And how can I do this in a more efficient way? So it's a whole mindset for training. And, that's really the beauty in jiu-jitsu. And that's what really makes the art so special, is the smoothness in the application, the effectiveness.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Well, thank you for answering all of our questions,
Thank you,
online and internet and musical and all of our questions.
Well, hopefully this won't be the only time we have Henry on. Hopefully we have him back again.
Hopefully the podcast lives further than 6 episodes and we get to do more. And yeah, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, write them on a piece of paper and burn it in a pot somewhere, and the smoke will somehow get to us. Or you could use the internet.
Henry, where can they find you?
Well, I have a Facebook page, so you can go to my Facebook page. Not my personal page. I have a fan page, just because I think my personal page got filled up. I also have a group page, which is Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, and then also my website, hiddenjujitsu.com. So that's if you're interested in learning more technique, more philosophy, they can find it there at
And he's super interactive. Like, he's always interacting with the people in this group. So it's
I try
really
to be very,
cool.
very, I try to put myself out there a lot and try to be available for all of the members of my site. I think that's a big thing, is really having yourself available to answer questions, to help people. And that's my goal and my mission, is really to help people with jiu-jitsu, using jiu-jitsu as a tool.
You have any upcoming seminars that you want to promote that you're going to be at?
I just got done with 9 weeks of traveling straight for seminars. So I do have a couple. We haven't announced it yet, but I think it will be announced this week. We're going to do the Sub and Surf Costa Rica camp in April.
Yeah.
So stay
Nice.
tuned for dates on that, and there'll be some information. We're going to Costa Rica, and it'll be a week long of training in, I think, Tamarindo, which is an amazing surf break, amazing surf spot in April. I will be in Bali at the Agatsu training camp in Bali in June, the first week of June, which is a really awesome, it's an awesome camp, because the whole thing with the camp is there's different instructors teaching different things, and so there's going to be a movement type drills, kind of like movement yoga type for jiu-jitsu. There's going to be a breathing workshop. So every day we're going to do some movement type drills. We're going to do some breathing, which is such an important aspect to jiu-jitsu that most people don't understand or most people don't teach. They don't realize the significance of how to oxygenate yourself and how to breathe properly so that you can train and not get tired. And then I'll be teaching the jiu-jitsu portion, and I think there's a Kali portion in there too, which is super interesting. So it's one of those camps where I'm actually really, really excited to go to because I get to learn.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not just the one teaching. I'm coming as a student also. So I'm super excited about that. And that's going to be in June in Bali. And if you guys have never been to Bali, it is a magical place. I went there for the first time last year, and I fell in love with the place. It's so amazing. It's so nice. And it's for Americans too, it's extremely inexpensive.
Really nice.
The travel there, the plane ticket's a little bit expensive, but once you get there, everything is so cheap. Food was amazing. Beaches are amazing. Weather was awesome. So
sweet.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much again for being on our wonderful podcast, and check Henry out on all of his social medias and stuff. And check us out also. Share it with your friends. Or not.
Yes. Submitting Live.
Submitting Live Podcast.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.